what kind of prime minister will be backed by the two parties, and would the president actually give his blessing to this kind of government?
Well, I think the president has to give his blessing to a government that can command a majority, especially after such a long negotiating period. The question, as you suggest, the big question is whether the prime minister is credible. The president is entitled to recognise a prime minister as credible internationally, or he can turn that personality down. I think both parties want it, clearly, but they both sort of cancel each other out, it does seem quite likely that they go for a sort of third man or woman, someone from either the administration, a civil servant, or another party, perhaps from the centre-right. But for the moment, no real personality has emerged, and those names that have been in the wash essentially have denied it, have distanced themselves from it. And so I think that is the big question. It's why these negotiations might last another few days and into next week.
I mean, an angle that we haven't talked about, and then, Jordan, I'll come to the markets, but actually an angle that we haven't talked about that so much is that we're also hoping for, or at least Macron and Merkel are hoping for, some kind of European integration. That could be to some kind of bond issuance further down the road, or, you know, banking union, capital markets union. Does this freak out the Germans?
I think it's extremely difficult for those who are in Berlin and arguing for more integration in the Eurozone. It makes it even more difficult because there are already obstacles. There are philosophical differences between Paris and Berlin that everyone is familiar with. They remain very much present, and they've held up negotiations between Paris and Berlin so far. I think there isn't any immediate danger. What's in that draft coalition agreement from yesterday involves agreement from Europeans that they essentially won't give. So on the ECB bonds, which they've now dropped, on creating a path out of the Eurozone that doesn't involve leaving the EU, I don't think that is necessarily credible. But what is a problem is that you have a government that doesn't seem to understand how the EU operates very well, and therefore the French and Germans will find it very difficult to argue for more integration if the third biggest economy of the Eurozone is led by such a government.
Jordan, if we look at the spreads between 10-year BTPs and bonds, you can see the kind of, you know, it widened and then maybe got back a touch as they said, no, we don't want debt relief from the European Union. I mean, is this just going to go up and up and up?
Well, let's not be alarmist. It's a government that is putting forward a programme that's a lot less scary than it looked just yesterday. So they've taken out the leaving the euro sort of components to the deal. They've even changed the debt write-off. It's not asking for a debt write-off, it's changing the accountancy rules, how it's reflected in statistics. So that's a lot less scary.
Isn't that dodging? I mean, isn't that fiddling finances?
I don't know. But for markets, what really matters is most investors have kind of been going into this with a neutral sort of position, net long slightly for the carry. But we're going to ask the question, that BTP bund spread that you had on the screen just then is still relatively tight compared to the recent historical range. 2016, 2015, it was still wider, and things weren't that bad back then.
Right, but this is ECB, right? This is QE.
It is, and QE is coming to an end by the end of this year.
Right.
So the market's going to have to start to reflect pricing a little bit more normally. So we're going back to more of a normal time, but before the whole financial crisis, the spread was extremely tight. So the market's looking at the very long history. Are we in that Goldilocks period before the financial crisis, or is there some sort of credit risk I have to attach to it? I think wider is probably the better way to play it. I don't think investors are going to be buying BTPs today, if I'm talking short term. But we took profit yesterday on our sort of trades because it's been a big move already. When you're in these sort of panics, these sort of risks off, it's kind of non-linear. You're not sure what the levels are. I can't see 160 being that big of a deal. We could get there, but no strong view. We've already taken profit is the sort of view from us.
All right.